over the fine print of the budget. We are now joined by the Minister for Urban Development and Oil and Gas, Mr. Hardeep Puri. Mr. Puri, thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. Appreciate your time. I think one of our guests summarized it very well. He called it a triple C budget: capex, consumption and credit. So I want to get started with the plan that the Finance Minister has laid out, one of the priority areas, and that is the green focus of the budget. 35,000 crore rupee capex announced for energy transition, energy security and net zero. If you can highlight for us the roadmap as far as this 35,000 crore rupee capex plan is concerned, and also clarify whether any of this will at all be used as far as OMC compensation is concerned. We're given to understand that that is not the case. I just want you to clarify that.
Shireen, thank you very much for having me on your show. My opening comment is that this is a budget a very confident finance minister has presented, and it is anchored in development and growth, and it logically follows from the journey that we have been able to negotiate in the last 2 years. I may have lost you a little bit on the sound, quarter of a minute or so, but let me start by saying that capex increase on 10,000 of 33% to take it to 10 lakh crores. This is something that will benefit every sector. Then you asked a specific question on the 35,000 crores set aside for the capex. Now this, I think, has two components. One component, if I recall correctly from the speech, is of 5,000 crores. This is for the strategic petroleum facility. The other 30,000 crores is capex, which will also facilitate the transition to green energy. And I think it's a very welcome step. But I would add to this 35,000 crores some of the other very important announcements which we might lose in the detail, but which are very important. Let me give you one, for instance. The 5% CBG, that is compressed biogas blending, which has been made mandatory. This will immediately result in greater offtake of compressed biogas. And if I remember correctly, the Honorable Finance Minister also mentioned, I think, a figure of 500 CBG plants. Again, in this process. One of the points that we have been negotiating in the run-up, me with the other concerned ministers, is on what is called FOM. Now, what we say is that we had introduced an increase from 46 rupees a kilo to 54 rupees a kilo for the CBG which is produced. But you know, the CBG plants make more money from the fertilizer manure, what they call FOM. Now, I saw a very interesting formulation in the Honorable Finance Minister's speech, and I'll just read it out. We'll say that it says somewhere here that we are going to devise policies in order to address this issue. Now, this is music to my ears, because today the green energy transition, Shireen, is assuming fascinating dimension. You've gone on ethanol blending from 1.4% to 10.7%. We are accelerating it to 20%. We have second generation ethanol made from agricultural waste and bamboo. We are scaling that up. CBG is what we required a little push on. This budget not only provides the necessary encouragement for it, but electric vehicles, you know, that repeatedly I heard references to lithium and batteries and other this thing. So when the full impact of this budget is soaked in, you'll just discover that green hydrogen or green energy, green growth is not just a theme, that a lot has been done under that category to facilitate that green transition. I mean, a few days ago, and I think the Finance Minister mentioned it also, an amount of 19,700 or 800 crores was set aside as part of the green hydrogen mission. Now, that is for PLIs, you know, on electrolyzer manufacture. So I think overall it's a very encouraging and a very positive story today flowing from the budget on green growth.
You're right in pointing that out. And just to break it up for our viewers, as you were pointing out, 5,000 crore rupees for strategic storage filling of oil reserves and 30,000 crore rupees as the capital support to oil marketing companies. But Mr. Puri, I'm going to ask you to wear your other hat, which is the Urban Development Minister's hat as well, and address the other announcement that's coming from the budget. And that has a lot of people excited because the budget has talked about an urban infra development fund of 10,000 crores per annum starting 2023. Now, what can we expect in terms of the roadmap, utilization, and what we should expect as the next steps of operationalizing this, because urban infrastructure is in dire need of rejuvenation?
No, I entirely endorse your view, your assessment that the urban infrastructure is in dire need for rejuvenation. I mean, that goes without saying. Now, if you look at the pace of urbanization, the autonomous urbanization, and you take it all that, I totally agree with you. But you also have to look at something else, which is that, you know, in the 10 years between 2004 and 2014, the total spend on the urban space, that is the value of all the urban schemes put together, was 1,57,000 crores. Today, that has gone up to 18 lakh crores, from 1,57,000 crores to 18 lakh. So the money is coming in, Shireen, in different projects, in different schemes, etc. If you look at the provisioning for, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, I know that's both urban and rural, but there is a strong component of about 25,000 crores or so out of that 79, which is for the urban sector. But this urban development fund is essentially an amount of 10,000 crores, which is very good seed money for 10,000 crores for tier 2 and tier 3 cities. You see, all these urban spends are not just government expenditure. You see, government steps in, then you have the state government, because, you know, land is a state subject. The states will be encouraged to come in. Then there will be public-private partnership, as you have in the Smart City Mission. So I think it's overall very good news that the attention to detail in terms of the requirements of tier 2, tier 3 cities has been frontally addressed in this budget through this urban development fund.
Yes, that certainly is good news, Mr. Puri. Mr. Puri, if I could go back to the green theme that you spoke of, and the budget has prioritized this as one of the key focus areas. You know, you talked about some of the measures that the government has articulated in the budget for batteries and so on and so forth. There was no mention, however, on whether the FAME subsidies are likely to continue from 2024, and that's what industry was hoping to have clarity on. Now, the sun sets on the FAME scheme in its current avatar in 2024. Are we to assume that there is a view that, it's done its bit, it's done its time, or could we expect an extension from 2024? I just wanted to understand the thinking on that front.
No, first and foremost, you're making a very important general point on subsidies, how long they will continue. So without going into subsidies on anything, my understanding of subsidies as a former, chairman of the subsidies committee of the GAT, that subsidies have a defined purpose. They are brought in with specific purpose in mind. Like, for instance, if you use the excise, if you reduce the excise on petrol, central government excise, then the center forgoes revenue in order to make sure that the consumer is, cushioned. Then if you have a production subsidy at some time, but all subsidies are intended and must be digressive. You don't have a subsidy and then make it entrenched and go on increasing it. I mean, that's what happened in a way to the previous scheme on our exports also. Then you brought in the PLI, which is far more targeted, etc. So look, I think the government has displayed a very high degree of sensitivity to what is required. When we went through the pandemic, they came in through a large number of schemes, subsidized, not subsidized, free food, almost free vaccine. So even when it comes to energy, I think what we are hoping is that the OMCs will no longer have to, take the hit. Their under-recoveries will improve, that even on diesel, their listing will improve, and that international prices, which are today, I think $82 a barrel was a price today, it will come down further, even with economic activity, because there's a self-fulfilling prophecy there. I mean, if on an inflationary situation, You know, our inflation is under control, but a lot of other countries which had very high stimulus packages have very high inflation rates still. That you have to avoid getting into the big R situation, and for that prices will remain within a band. That's what I'm hoping. And if that happens, you don't need subsidies of that kind. But as I said, I'm not referring to any particular action, because your question was also couched in a thing, what will happen after 2024? I'm answering in that spirit.
I take that on board, Mr. Puri. But, you know, you talked about subsidies, and of course the petroleum subsidy being pegged at 2,257 crores for FY24. But you also brought up the issue of under-recoveries. Now, oil marketing companies had put down their wish list in terms of compensation. That, of course, has not been taken forward beyond the 20,000 crores that was already granted to OMCs by the government. What is the current situation as far as under-recoveries are concerned, Mr. Puri? And given the fact that China has now reopened and the Chinese economy is starting to bounce back, how concerned are you about the potential impact on oil prices and consequently on OMCs?
See, insofar as the amount that you're mentioning, I think it's the 22,000 crores, that was for the compensation for the gas sector, if I remember correctly. So that's a separate issue. Insofar as you know, compensating the OMCs for under-recoveries, etc. You know, they make money in one way. They do better when there's no under-recovery. You know, it evens out in the end. But you know, if they are going to be getting more equity or they're getting more money for green transition, etc., that's a more sensible way of going about it. Then we will monitor the situation. I mean, I just saw one of the companies which was very badly hit earlier. I think the last quarter they made a profit of 2,000 crores. What I'm not in a position to answer is what will be the global situation. Shireen, China is coming back. But the issue is not whether China is bouncing back. The issue is, will there be a disequilibrium between the demand and the supply? Today, the global scenario is you have a consumption of something like 100 million barrels a day. If there is suddenly a shortfall of 1 million barrels or 2 million barrels a day, obviously prices will go up. On the other hand, I personally think there's enough oil around in the market, and I don't know how concerned I am. I'm very confident about the fact that the Prime Minister's very decisive decision-making. I mean, on 2 occasions when he thought that the situation was going to spiral out of control on prices, on November 21 and May 22, he reduced the prices of the excise duty. That is the capacity we have. Secondly, I think our domestic gas production is going up. There's going to be more gas available. On petrol also, we have, on crude oil, we have diversified our sources of import from 27 last year to 39 now. And we are in the happy situation now, wherever oil is available, whether it's from sources from which we had imports earlier or first time, we are happily exploring all of them. So I'm reasonably confident that we'll be able to navigate the future as well.
Mr. Puri, you've given me a segue to ask you a follow-up question on that. As you pointed out, that we've opened up different sources or different avenues of being able to import crude into the country, and we did so significantly from Russia. What is the cushion currently, that we are being able to leverage on account of the various deals that we have been able to do? You pointed out that the price today is at around 80 plus at this point in time. What is the benefit that we've been able to accrue at this point, given the kind of arrangements that we've been able to work through? Mr. Puri, can you hear me? Well, we try and re-establish contact with Hardeep Puri. Very interesting conversation there with the oil minister. He's, of course, also the Minister for Urban Development. We'll try and reconnect with him. The FY24 windfall tax mop-up is seen at around 35,000 crore rupees. That is exactly what CNBC-TV18 had reported. Remember, the windfall tax continues to be in operation, currently at about the mop-up for FY24 is being seen at 40,000 crores. That is the expectation at this point in time, which essentially means that the mechanism will continue to be in place. But important commentary coming in there from Minister Puri on the utilization of the allocation for both urban infrastructure through the Urban Infra Development Fund, an allocation of 10,000 crores annually that the Finance Minister has announced in this budget, and also the 35,000 crore rupee capex for the green transition, which has been announced by the Finance Minister as well. OMCs, they were hoping for compensation. That has not been the case, and as the Minister pointed out, under recoveries, etc., will even themselves out. He feels fairly confident that the price band that we are currently seeing, if all goes well, will stay. And of course, India, as he pointed out, has opened up various sources and avenues of being able to import crude. We are going to take a break, but there's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a minute with more here. Our continuing coverage on CNBC-TV18. Your budget headquarters continues.